All right, guys, we are live. No, actually, we're not live. I'm sorry. We are on Zoom, but I'm here with John and Gary. Thank you guys for coming on here. We want to talk about intellectual property in the knife industry. That sounds maybe a little bit specific, but it's actually a fairly debatable topic with a bit of nuance to it. Now, if you're not familiar, I own Exodus Knife and Tool. Links to that will be in the description box below, and we'll have links for these guys in the description box below. Guys, you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your brand and what you're into? John, you can go.
Okay. So, I'm John Sharetta from Heavyset Tactical YouTube channel and Heavyset Knife Company, LLC that my dad and I just started. And I have a couple models out so far. I've known you long enough to know that I always got something cooking up. I actually just threw one together that was a dud just to show one of my hunters, Yep. And then I got some new stuff coming out this week. But yeah, just happy to be here and have an audience to be able to have discussions like this one. And I appreciate you for having me on.
Now, John, did you just launch a website? Are you getting ready to have a drop here?
So I am gearing up for a couple of things. In about 7 days, I'm going to launch the website. That's going to give people a place to see my previous work, what I'm working on now, and photos and contact info and links to the channel and Instagram. And then I'm going plus or minus a few. Badger Claw's working with me on the leather. I got that order in, and I'm going to use them for all my hunters so they can ride on the belt. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting month, and so the drop will be in about 30 days, 35 maybe, and the website will be live within about a week. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Gary, tell us about your brand.
Well, I'm Gary Creeley, and my brand is Creeley Blades. Been making knives for 9 or 10 years now. Started sharpening knives when I was a little kid, collecting knives when I was a little kid. In fact, when I was in college, which is longer than I like to remember now, it's like in the 90s. But I got a Blue Ridge catalog. For those of you who know, Blue Ridge is like it used to be this big magazine. Now it's an online, and I made up some fictitious business name, and I was like the knife dealer for all my college friends. We got all kinds of cheap stuff and swords and all kinds of madness. So I was, I've been in knives for a long time. I started making them. I'm particularly in the steels. To me, the study of why you might choose one steel over another, and the modern technology of steels, and the material science of it. I'm fascinated by all that. And when you can make, I've had cheap knives when I was younger. And so as I got older, I got into Spyderco. Spyderco is probably the one that had all these different steels. And I was like, wow, I really want to check these out and compare them. And now with my own knife company, I make knives in all kinds of different steels. In fact, I have 30 Makos in the successor to MagnaCut. It's experimental. It's hard to get. I always got to call them and ask them for the steel.
Is that MagnaTough?
Bradford called it MagnaTough, but they just made that up. Oh. And I don't think the powers that be were particularly happy about it. So they did call it MagnaTough. It is that same steel. It's the first melt. There's a second melt that's apparently a little different. I don't have any of the second melt yet. So it's kind of cool to play with these steels. What it should be is MagnaCut with more edge retention. MagnaCut's not a super high edge retention steel. Everybody thinks it is, but it's not. It's good. It's good. But toughness and stainlessness is its sort of claim to fame with probably around an S35 VN type of edge retention capability. But so anyway, I'm excited for that. I only have 30 of them. And I think I'm going to have to hand grind them. I'm not going to be able to send them out to get ground. So I might just put Scandies on them.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Rock and roll. Well, if anybody is watching this little podcast here titled something like intellectual property in the knife industry, I'm guessing that they are an absolute knife dork like me. So I thought we'd do a quick show and tell here today. And so this, I'm not even going to show my own knife. You guys are welcome to show your own knives, but as a knife review channel, I'm going to show something else. This is a new custom that I have from Amando Knives in Poland. It's in Vanitas 4 Extra. A lot of attention to detail in every single little thing on this knife. And our boy here is a carver, which is a fairly unique segment of this industry that doesn't have a lot of people in it. But wow. You can see here, with the detail, we're going kind of above and beyond on detail to the point where some people think it's silly. That's fine that they think that. He doesn't do all of his knives like this, but I've really been enjoying this. It's really, really unique. I think it's fun. I was able to move a couple of knives and custom order this. I think it's more of a bigger, thicker, more bushcraft beast, not bushcraft, outdoors type blade than what he normally does. And I think he enjoyed the experience. I've really been kind of impressed by this Vanitas 4 Extra so far. So yeah, that's the one I want to show off tonight because it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Vanitas 4 is that's like is that like a 3V? Is that like a Bowler 3V or what is that? I think it's an equivalent to something.
So TRC uses it.
It is in the Vasco family of steels. However, it's going to have a higher edge retention and a little bit less toughness, I think, than 3V. And I can't, off the top of my head, remember composition information on it. But it is, I don't think it's in the same, I don't think it's in the same family as like Crewware or a Vasco Ware family steel, but it might be.
I have an interesting, what's funny is as soon as you said that, I was thinking about how excited I am. I just today on my daily carry video talked about how I was excited to test Vanitas 4E because TRC uses it on a few of their knives. I have their Millie Curie in it. Apparently it's a very, very, very tough steel.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
It's got relatively high carbon. It's got a 1.5% carbon. Yeah, I don't know that there is an analog necessarily to it. Cool. And it's got 8% chrome, 1%, 1.5 moly, 0.5 molybdenum. Yeah. And 4% vanadium. Cool. Yeah, it's sort of a different steel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been fun. My first experience with it.
That's a pretty crazy knife.
Yeah, it's wild. It's over the top for sure. What do you got for us, John?
Okay, so.
Oh, I already know.
I was gonna say how much I've been enjoying your new iteration of the Jackalope. Because if you won't brag about it, I will. But I have a special. If this was 1 month ago, I would have told you that my number one piece is actually the Mako. That was one that I wanted. And I even hit you up about your N695 or N691. I wanted that. I wanted one so bad.
No, mine is Bowler N360, so it's like an L200.
Right. So right now, I actually was able to score one of Jed Hornbeek's customs, and it's the CCK, the new iteration of the Choir Boys camp knife. Shout out to Scab from Choir Boys Cutlery. I just sent him one of my Hunters in N690 or Nitro V today. But this is one of those knives where, really, really functional kydex. Really, I always love when they accent kydex with leather, and I prefer a leather belt loop on my kydex, so that was pretty ironic. But I think if you took this much going on is not my normal cup of tea. I like a lot. I think basic is better with my belt knives, but this thing, it just has so much going on. But when I think of someone pitching this knife, like the swedge, false edge up top, two fullers, a raised set of jimping, and then a kind of leaned forward, more tactical handle. I think someone would shake their head and say, how are you going to make all of that work? And he really did incredible job designing this handle. It's quite a knife, man. And I took the shot and ordered one, even though it's a little too busy for my liking. But as soon as I got it, Scab told me, he was like, as soon as you get it, you're gonna kind of figure something new out about it every day. So I'm really excited for you guys to see the review I have coming out tomorrow.
I love Jed's work, man.
Yeah, it's different.
It's very different. He's got his own whole little thing going on, and it's not like anybody else.
Yeah, he does. But it was funny because I think I messaged you about it. It came, dude, it didn't even come in a box. It came in this plastic bag with unsecured single piece of bubble wrap around it. And I was like, I thought I might have annoyed him asking him when it was going to send out, because it was over the holidays and it didn't send out for about a week. But he said, Jed sends a lot of his knives out like that. And sure enough, man, it's one of those knives that's just got a lot going on, but it's in CPM 3V, and that's one of my favorite go-to kind of outdoors knife steels. So I'm really excited to show everybody the testing video of it.
Yeah.
Very slicey.
Yeah. All right, Gary.
All right. So I got two knives.
Nice.
So, when you buy a knife, in a lot of ways, you're buying a story. You're kind of investing into a maker. You're, all these kinds of things. And early in my knife making career, there were a number of YouTubers who were basically my knife trainers, like my knife making training people. Walter Sorrells was one of them. But another guy who has a really interesting story and kind of got me into bushcraft knives is a guy named, his company is called Jack Lore. Jack Lore, Sandy Jack is his name. And he did a ton of videos. He doesn't make too many anymore. His knives are really hard to get. And I finally got one on eBay. And that's this guy here. He does really good leather work. So, leather with a dangler. Mm-hmm. And so this is a Allen Wood Woodlore, what he called a Woodlore knife. And it's a English U handle, which is I don't know, just kind of looks like pine to me, but it's English wood. He stabilizes his own wood. It's 01 steel. It's not the most exciting steel. Honestly, I would prefer a blade in like stainless, honestly, for like an ABL. Or 52-100 if you wanted to go the carbon route. But it's cool. His work is impeccable. I mean, tapered tang, if you can see that. It's got liners. Even after all these, he makes his own pins, the decorative pins. Just really impeccable work. All of it is just impeccable work. So anyway, that's a Jack Lord. Now, what I learned is I built this exact knife. Speaking of intellectual property, I built this exact knife, and I found that it was too small. So mine looks much like. Now, at this point, making a Woodlore is like making a Loveless drop point hunter. I mean, it's almost public domain at this point. Mm-hmm. But now, one other knife. When I was around 14, I was still into knives, and I wanted a knife for birthday. And we used to get before the internet, you whippersnappers. We used to get magazines, and the Bass Pro Shops magazine had this knife. And it was on like a crazy sale at the time. It was in my birthday budget. Now this is polished, but it is a carbon steel. I have sharpened it because, of course, the edge sucked. But it says Heritage USA on it. Now, I believe this to be made by Western. Mm-hmm. I believe this is a Western Bowie knife. That's a real stag handle and a nice one at that. Oh. And Heritage USA. Now I'll really go back in time a little bit. Jim Baker had a show called the Praise the Lord Network, PTL, and they had a whole Christian theme park. I forget where it was. It's now defunct and it's like condos. But he had this whole Christian theme park, and Heritage USA was the name of it. So I think they had Western make these Bowies or Bowies, however you want to say it, had them make it. And I took this camping. Now, this is a cool knife, but this is worthless to actually use. Like, unless you're like trying to survive in the West, on the Wells Fargo Express or something. Like, this is not really practical. There were so many better choices of knives I could have asked for, but when you're a kid, you don't know. You're just like, that's cool, I want that. So anyway, that's my second knife.
Nice. I'm still like, that's cool, I want that. So maybe I just haven't gotten past that, grown up at all. So, man, if I end up putting my hood on or whatever, I apologize. We are 30 degrees in here, a little bit chilly in here, and I wanted to turn a heater on in here with the propane, but it set one of the alarms off, so I'm just going to suck it up. But intellectual property in the knife industry, there's a little more nuance than someone may think. To get off topic slightly and make a point, Honda just gave a design of a new motorcycle that they want to manufacture, a new little 300cc cafe racer, and they submitted the entire motorcycle and its full details to protect their intellectual property. They trademarked the actual look of the motorcycle, which in the knife industry I think doesn't work so well. So we don't really have a lot of intellectual property in the knife industry, it seems to me. However, there are lines that polite men will draw, I think. And so there are some specific trademarks that we have known in the past, but the subjective look of a knife can be really difficult to prove. And I think very few people in the industry have the money to throw weight around and protect anything fully. But there's been some interesting things going on, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on the topic.
Well, it's an interesting topic. On the DBK review of my bushcraft knife, there was quite a few people in the comments section saying that my bushcraft knife was a ripoff of the Benchmade bushcraft, which is strange because they're not at all alike.
No,
not even close.
In a picture, sometimes knives can look the same, even when they're very different. And so I think there was a little bit of that going on. Not to mention, I think I made my Folklore before they made their current iteration of their knife anyway. So mine predated it. And so I think there's very little legal about it. It's a gentleman's agreement more than anything, and how close you get to it. Alan Wood, famous knife maker who invented that Woodlore style knife that so many people make, he actually sent me an email and asked me if he could use my handle design in a knife. And I was like, whoa, yeah. Can you give me can I buy a knife from you? Because it'd be cool to have like an original Woodlore, because they're quite expensive. I said, he's like, well, I'll trade you. I'm like, okay. So I showed him a knife that I would trade him, and I never heard from him again. So either he didn't like my knife, or he's got sick, or Lord knows what.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. I have a knife called a Mako. I did that because I thought it looked like a fish, like a shark. So I thought, how about a Mako? But Case makes a knife that is a buck 110 style knife that they call a Mako. And Case is actually famous for suing companies over knife names. They own tons of knife model names of knives they don't make. And if you get too big or popular, they might give you a cease and desist. But yeah, it's really, as smaller makers and even smaller companies, it's not worth fighting.
Right.
And so somebody pushes you, or somebody feels offended by what you're making and asks you to stop, you just respect it and stop. And so even bigger companies, except for Case, can't trademark every single name and trademark every single style. I remember that, speaking of intellectual property, and I want to hog up the show here, but I remember when Spyderco was suing somebody for putting a circle in one of their knives. I forget who. It might have been Benchmade, actually. Somebody somewhere. You can't patent a circle. Like, it's already been done. So it can get out of hand sometimes.
Well, that's the problem. I think you just hit on a key point when you said it's already been done. So if you want to sue someone over intellectual property or for a trademark, I think you have to prove that you are the first person to have done whatever it is that you're suing over. It didn't exist before you, and that you own that idea or whatever. And with how many knives have been made forever, I think that's really a big deal. And you mentioned Spyderco, but also Bussy made a name for themselves for that with the Talon hole. So the lanyard hole at the front guard area on the bottom side. And I remember them, I'm quite certain. I remember them making a stink about, but I think they sent some cease and desists as well. This was probably back in 2014, 15. And I think as a whole, in today's time of communication, I think sending cease and desists in this industry, for the most part, just makes you look bad. Like, we had that kid at Transparent Knives. Hinder sent him a cease and desist because he tested one of the knives and it came half a point outside of the advertised range. He mentioned it on his Instagram and was making a little bit of noise about it, and so Hinder sent him a cease and desist.
Wow.
It just looked awful for Rick. But again, that's kind of what's weird, is you mentioned it's a gentleman's game, and we're talking about a lot of legal stuff here. I think Cold Steel was sending out cease and desists for anybody using the term San Mai. That was trademarked. I think Peter Kohler got a cease and desist for using the term San Mai. Everybody uses the term. Not a great move. Especially for these companies, if they're not willing to follow through. A lot of people get scared by a cease and desist, but a cease and desist is nothing. It costs nothing. If you've already got lawyers, you can send your own cease and desist. It's not a legal document. It doesn't hold weight in court. It's a warning. So, generally speaking, I would say it's not a good move. And yet, John, you had mentioned some direct, absolute ripoffs to include logos coming from Sheena. And we have a big segment of, sadly, our community that supports that. You want to give your thoughts on that?
Well, what I find funny is when I look at it, and you know, I'm a very visual guy, and I talk with my hands, and I think about things a little differently. But I look at it like the knife design. When I first was out at Survive, I remember when I figured out that there was not like a patent, like I couldn't make, you know, my hunter and patent the design. And at first, looking at it from all the other industries I've worked in, it sounded crazy, right? Like, how can I? Because then somebody could just what, you know, and I thought it was so interesting, but now I totally understand it, you know, in such a different way, having gone through the Survive thing and now making my own knives. I think that the you know, the design aspect of knives is more um a moral rule than it is a physical, you know, law bound rule. And you know, there are some companies, whether they're overseas or not, that are kind of willing to, just because they're going to sell 1,000 of them for $30 a piece as opposed to the real one that's 200, they're going to cross that line, and they could care less. That's like the F and grow. And you know, I didn't want to get into a routine of slamming anyone online. I don't want any bad karma. You know, I'm making knives myself. But you know, F and grow is one of those companies where I see, you know, they went through their stuff with Work Tough Gear, stealing that. Now they're taking stuff from Bussy. You know, I've and it's not, what I can't understand, Jacob, is that it's not like it's similar. It's an actual, like, identical copy with the holes in the same spot for the lanyard, everything. And it begs the question, why wouldn't you just at least change the, you know, something, the
There,
grind or the lanyard hole? And that's what's so funny. Like, when I first started making knives, I kept saying to Gary how worried I was when I was going up to visit him at his shop and we first met. I was so worried about, you know, not not getting accused of taking someone else's design, and should I or should I not do this. And we were talking about practicing by taking a knife design that I do like and trying to make it. And I was even worried about like someone seeing that. So it's, you know, it's one of those funny things where I think it's just kind of a moral code, and sadly that's what we adhere to, you know, have to adhere to.
the F and grow, and there's another company. I think it's called Langren or something with an
Something
L.
like that.
But they don't just steal the designs, they steal the logos as well. Now, I actually have one of those knives to review. A supporter of mine, quite a few people asked me to do it. I said no quite a few times. A supporter of mine was really, really into it. So I am going to review one of these knives. I'm going to do it objectively, and I'm going to break it, and then I'm going to send the pieces to Peter's Heat Treat. I talked to them today for a mechanical analysis, chemical compositional analysis, to see if the steel is even what they're claiming that it is. And I'm going to try and keep all of my thoughts on the subject till the end. But one thing that I heard personally was, I don't owe these companies anything. Uh, Ironically, from an individual who is sharing a bunch of pro-American stuff and help the veterans and this 22, this, that, the other, I don't owe them anything. And I don't like that, but partially they are correct. Do you owe a company anything? No. I mean, could they? And there's some bad people in this industry. There really are. There are some people in America screwing other Americans over and doing some bad things. So to some degree, he's right. It's still hard for me when you're. And the thing is, if you have the manufacturing capability to make these knives with the details they are.
Then why not make another knife? You know, I just, ugh.
You can make anything. It doesn't. And listen, if someone sees, and most of them are Bussy knives right now. If someone sees a Bussy knife and they don't know anything about knives, then they're not buying it because it's a cheap bussy. They're not buying it because the logo says bussy on it. All they're doing is making the bussy secondary market more annoying and confusing down the road. So you could just make anything. Why direct copy? Why make the fixtures and the tooling needed to copy direct? It's not like they could steal their tooling, right? So there's no reason to do an absolute copy at these price points. And it just really, really sucks. Gary, you got anything additional that you want to?
So as it relates to sort of breaking the rules in terms of intellectual property, I think there's kind of three different levels of that. The first level is doing something that would be like a homage to somebody else's knife, like doing your version of Drop Point Hunter, all very similar to Lovelace's Drop Point Hunter or whatever. So that's one level. And, you know, usually you would go to that person and say, hey, is it okay if I make a knife that's very similar to yours? They might say yes, they might say no. And that's kind of level. If they say no and you do it anyway, there's not much anybody can do.
Right.
Usually. Then there's the second level, which is just a straight up direct copy. Like you didn't even try to change it. You tried to make it as close to the original as possible. That's more than a homage. That's just a kind of a copy. But then the third one, which some of the Chinese companies are doing, is straight up counterfeiting. Mm-hmm. And that I don't think, you know, anybody is at all okay with that. And that truly can harm more than the other two. That can really harm the company because somebody gets a counterfeit knife. They thought it was real. It doesn't perform. And now they think that the company that was counterfeited is not a good knife company or is a poor knife company. So those are sort of the three different levels of intellectual, you know, property breaking into these different things. So, yeah, I have a counterfeit. I bought it on Wish.com for $7. I have a counterfeit.
$7. Sorry,
$7.
Not 20.
Benchmade bug out, standard Benchmade bug out. And I've been wanting to do this video. I just haven't gotten around to it. How to sharpen your counterfeit. And I'm going to get a sharp blade and just run the knife straight in and grind it like at a perpendicular level. But I just wanted to see how close it was. And it is pretty close.
This video brought to you by Combat Abrasives.
Right. Those guys. But yeah, so there's different levels of it. And I will say, you know, back, 15, 20 years ago in the knife world, there was a lot of, oh, that's too close to my knife. And there's a lot of territorialism as it related to knife designs. And so people have lightened up about it for the most part, unless it's really close or really overt. And so that's my thoughts on it. I don't get too bent out of shape about it. Like with my own knives, like I'll see there's a few people out there that'll make a Mako, whatever. So they should ask me. That's the protocol, to ask. Like Alan Wood asked about my handle design. I don't know if I have one here. Here's a Mako. Try not to cut my finger off getting it. But, there's that handle design, which is
very unique,
carried through most of my knives in some way or shape or form.
I think it's the palm swell for me that really set your knives apart.
Yeah. And when I originally designed it, there was a guy named Michael Christie who was really into sharpening and testing knives and cutting cardboard and stuff, kind of like the pre-Cedric Inata guy, like the generation before Pete. And so I worked with him to make an EDC, and I designed the handle design, and we went back and forth a couple of times, and that's how the Mako came to be. This is really born on YouTube, honestly.
Nice.
Well, what's ironic is just very briefly, Jacob, is the other day, I had noticed, Gabe from the last Huntsman YouTube channel, him and I talk quite a bit, and I caught myself saying for like the 18th time, I just don't understand how someone that has the capability to make such a beautiful copy wouldn't just make a different knife, right? So I think that's like trying to figure out, what someone was thinking when they jumped off a bridge. It's just impossible. But the funniest part about that was, I used to look at it like when I first came up with this knife design that I wanted to make, I didn't show anybody because I was like, oh, well, what if somebody copied it? This was like 8 years ago. And I told Gabe the other day that having spent $15,000 just to be able to make decent hard use knives in my barn, it's not like, it takes quite a bit of effort, money, and time to make a line of knives, let alone a single run of knives. So it's one of those things where I just shake my head at it. That's a lot of effort for a company, foreign or not, whether they had the equipment already or not. That's quite an effort to put in, just to copy someone else's when you could clearly are capable of making pretty nice knives. And then Gary separated then there's the actual counterfeits as opposed to kind of just copying the style of a knife. And I should have thought of adding that in. So that was a good point, Gary.
Yeah, I liked that. And, I think the first Chinese company that I remember getting popular doing this was Danzo. I don't know if you guys remember them.
Ganzo, oh yeah.
Yeah, they were basically, for the most part, making Spydercos, but they would rip off just about anybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Benchmade, the Spydercos. And there was a lot of discussion about how that sucked, but I think that kind of, the quality, I think, was at least decent-ish, and I think it kind of paved the way for people actually enjoying purchasing counterfeits. But again, you're not getting an accurate representation of what that knife really should be, and so what's the point of buying the counterfeit anyways when it could have looked like anything? And so it's very weird. Everything about it is very weird. I think the motivation to want to do it is weird. I think the motivation to want to buy it is pretty weird.
The whole Ganzo deal, I had a few of those, bought and sold a few of those. They were not, I would not call them counterfeits. So they had a knife that was like a 940, I think, but it was clearly not a 940. It was a little bigger. It was a little different. It was an access lock before that patent had run out. So there was that. And then they had a knife that was pretty similar to PM2, Paramilitary 2.
I thought it was a counterfeit. So, but I never held one. So,
it was a little bit different, and it didn't say Spyderco, and they didn't sell it as Spyderco.
That's an important.
So I would call that a copy. It's sort of a semi-copy homage.
Yeah.
So,
but now we're here, and in a world of Alibaba and Temu and AliExpress, and not that there's maybe anything inherently wrong with any of those places themselves. I don't know, but they are a market where counterfeits thrive, certainly. And if you want we're in a world where if you want to steal MS660 chainsaw, you can buy the Chinese version for $300 shipped, and they have parts compatibility. We are in a very, very interesting time for manufacturing as a whole, and I think it makes sense that we're seeing that in the knife industry as well. So, I guess I do wish when it came to these outright copies that the people who know better were not buying them. That I do wish that the public figures, the people who have created a public voice for themselves, spoke out against it instead of seeing it as an opportunity to make a cheap and quick buck. And I wish that we lived in a society where these things killed themselves. Maybe that was not the right terminology, but that's not where we're at. So that's not where we're at.
As it relates to knives, where intellectual property is a little less cut and dry. I think the issue, especially with like Chinese manufacturers, is more they're playing on a bit of an uneven field.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Whether it's a copy or not, my Mako, just in materials and heat treat and a PG series Mako probably costs me, I mean, I'm exposing my hand, but there's really no secrets in this. Outside of what I do with sharpening and assembly and some of the other things for a PG Mako, I'm probably into it $110 just in my hard costs besides whatever my labor is worth.
Uh-huh.
And with that in mind, and that's for something like, a Magna Cut or something. More expensive steels would be even a little more than that. China could make me one of those knives and say something like an ABL or they like to use the 14C28N. That's popular, if that's in fact what it is, which,
Who knows?
But
right.
I could, if I made a fair batch of those, they would make them for me for probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $18.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, they would be assembled, they would be sharpened, they would be packaged in like my own branding design package, or they, help with that. And they would just come in a big box, and that would be that. That's really tempting, from a business model point of view. But the long and short of it is, I think technically, if it was an even playing field, I don't even think they could make it for that price. I think they're making it at a loss.
They're subsidized. Absolutely, they are.
So it's not even, they can't even make it for what they're selling it for in reality. No. So many, and I don't fault guys for doing it because it is a strong business model. A lot of people like the design of my Mako. If I just went, I got to work to make each one of them. If I just sent off to China and said, hey, send me 500 of these, then send them off to Blade HQ, send them off to, all the online people, which I don't go, Knife Center or DLT, and they could just sell them. And then when they're out, I just call, write an email or call on the phone, say, hey, send me another 1,000. And it's really easy and I'm making money. But with, geopolitical things as they are, who knows when that spigot gets turned off or becomes difficult or whatever, or supply chain stuff. And so you can never trust the Chinese. So for instance, Chinese manufacturers, not Chinese people, but Chinese manufacturers, they'll do, I don't want to be the next Greg Medford here. They'll do a batch for you and it'll be spectacular. And then you'll get the next batch and it won't be quite as good.
Mm-hmm.
You get the batch after that and it won't be as good as the second batch. And unless you have somebody on the ground or you yourself are on the ground in China and can really breathe down their necks and make sure that quality is consistent, it's really hard to do business. So I see all these knife companies out there that are guys that just like draw knives on napkins and send it to China. They got $10,000. They take out a loan or something and they're the next new knife company. They don't know anything about building knives. They don't know anything about quality controlling knives. But so for me, I understand the appeal of going the China route.
That's dangerous.
But on the other hand, it's fraught with whatever and can devalue your brand.
Well, and there should also be some level of pride in Now, maybe, I don't make my own knives. I have them made by White River, but I'm proud to have them made by White River. I'm proud to have them made up there in Fremont, Michigan. And I wish that wasn't going away, but it's a very short-sighted and short-term profit world that we live in, where people aren't concerned about their neighbor or their kids, and that's what they do. Now, that's not to say I don't buy anything from China. I've got a Chinese excavator, right? But and who knows what else I've got from China, of course. But
everything you're wearing.
When you this is
The microphone you're
oddly
talking
enough
in.
from Pakistan, but when you build a business off of this, of selling a product, I can't help but feel like maybe it's a little different. But I say that, and there's some really great brands out there making some really good stuff that's made in China. And I think the people who are trying to do this right are trying to use manufacturers like Ryuki or Civivi. Some of these other companies have actually built a brand.
Riot and Best Tech, yeah, they do a lot of.
Those guys don't do that model where the quality goes down, goes down.
So they have a brand, and you have some. If I'm making a random knife and I say it's made by these guys, now I have some quality assurance, and that's good. I don't know. It is that's a bit of a tough topic there when it comes to manufacturing, but
it is. It's I don't fault. I'm not among those who like, oh, China. I know China can make good stuff when they want to. They can make top quality. So I have a Chinese fiber galvo laser that's phenomenal. It was $3,000, $3,500. And if I would have bought an American equivalent, it would have been $20,000. So it's just like sometimes it's tough to not get it because the price difference. So we talk about tariffs, 25% tariffs, 50% tariffs. That's not going to get you anywhere close. That's the differential isn't like 25%. Differential is like 700% often. So yeah, and it's not a bash on all of their work, but these smaller companies though that do these little contracts, it's tricky. It's difficult. And the companies that do manufacturing best in China are the ones that have people on the ground.
Well, not only that, they're not going to be as cheap. So now all of a sudden you turn around and instead of spending $18 a blade, you're spending $50 a blade, when maybe you could go to White River, or you could go to a few of those places up there in Idaho to mill it, or to something else possibly, and maybe you could get it for $80 a knife or $110 a knife or whatever. So at some point, if you're smart with business, you do the most with the least. I mean, that's how this works. But I guess the most important point here is that the copies suck.
Yeah. The copies do. I'd be honest with you though, I have not run into a ton of them. Like when I wanted to see what a fake one was all about, like I literally had to seek it out. I had to do a little digging to find it. So I don't know that it's a plague on our community, on the knife community, as much as some other communities. I don't see it a lot. Maybe it's just the circles that I run in or whatever.
So one thing I want to point out here is you brought up an excellent point about the problem with these copies being brand recognition and brand reputation. I have a lot of people saying, and I'm bringing up the bussies because I am reviewing a fake bussie. It's really hard. I should already have the video up, but I'm really struggling with it. But whatever. But a lot of these bussies are starting to hit the market. Like they're being flooded in, and there are YouTubers out there really promoting them, and a lot of people are saying they're stealing sales from Bussy, and they're not. By the same logic, you could say that maybe that they're gaining sales for Bussy, because if someone's Bussy curious, they might buy one of these models and then decide that they want to pony up for the real one. But I don't. Nobody who wants to buy a Bussy is going to be satiated by buying a $30 Bussy copy off of Alibaba. So it's not a direct taking of a sale, because it's such a vastly different market. But still, with the reputation, as you mentioned, it's incredibly important, and it's still disgusting. It is disgusting to me. Now, John, did you want to talk about did you want to mention any future Survive knives or anything like that?
So I guess we'll talk about the elephant in the room here, because she's heavy. But yeah, I've been chewing on and kind of contemplating and talking with some of my buds about this situation with Micron knives, and I will call them Micron knives, even though they haven't made any knives yet. I'll call them by that name because that's what they listed their name as on the post on Blade Forums, which I am not a part of Blade Forums. I do not use Blade Forums. It's the only way to buy Carruthers and some other brands that I love, but I will not use Blade Forums. I've just had endless trouble, and I stay off of Blade Forums. But make a long story short,
I like Blade Forums. They're nice to me.
I just stay off of it.
I don't, it's not as useful as it once was, maybe. But
yeah. I think there's just, there's a lot of people that have a lot to say and not a lot going on and love putting their opinions in there. And most of them are negative, in my opinion. But I think that I want to start this off by clearly saying that if they ever do watch this video, I can adamantly say that Jack and his father are very, very nice people. I think that they are almost like a 12-year-old that picks up a handgun right now, and they're not really sure kind of the gratification of the post or the words used. And we're not talking about saving kids or going to war. We're talking about making knives, and I understand it's not that serious to some people, but it was a pretty big surprise to hear that Jack and his father are in Harrisburg, PA. They have a manufacturing company, and I guess I'll just lay out the base info that they are a father and son business kind of duo, and they are the ones that purchased all of the equipment from Survive outright. Everything wall to wall they purchased except for intellectual property and blanks and handle material and all that stuff and pre-made handles. They got the dog too. And so they're very, very nice people. I don't think they really understand. So when I was with them, there were so many times when I brought up knives and showed them some of the knives we had at Survive at the time and asked questions, and they had no interest in making knives at that point. They had no interest in knives at that point, and him and his dad just had, he said that he just had no background with fixed blades or folders, really, just of any kind. And that was just a few months ago. So they bought everything from Survive except for the blanks, handles, hardware, and intellectual property. But in that purchase, they also were able to buy the tooling for the vice tooling fixturing. Sorry, the vice fixturing, which is essentially aluminum blocks that are made to hold micarta and or blanks to form them into Survive knives. Now, you still need to program the machine to make those shapes, but they purchased the fixturing. And when I went up to visit them and see the dog and just see how they were doing and ask them if I ever needed services done for my knives, if they could help me out, it was just a friendly visit for about an hour. They actually told me that they were about to take them and wipe them clean The only reason they took them and didn't throw them away is because they're valuable to just swipe and use as new fixturing for other projects. So now all of a sudden they're, posting in blade forums that they are remaking Survive knives without to my knowledge, without the intellectual property or, any of Mike's magic. I spoke to Mike. He had no idea that was, occurring and didn't provide any knowledge of their plan, that he knew about. So I think it's interesting. It had me feeling a lot of things I didn't think I was going to feel, as far as you know I think I think if you have the plant to make these knives, right? And they're probably capable of making the knives. They had some pretty cool projects going on, some mouthpieces for tubas and other things of brass and steel. But I guess to make a rant down into just a sentence here, if you're going to decide to start making knives with your operation up there, I think it was just about the biggest bullet you could have ever shot into your foot by tying and associating yourself with the most unsuccessful, scandalous knife company in the history of knives. So I think that was a bad move. But
Yeah.
I think it just was a move from,
Ignorance.
to use the term naivety.
Yeah.
Of not realizing you don't want in any way, shape, or form to be connected to what was Survive. And I think there was an attempt. I think there were two things. I think they wanted to be transparent about where they were coming from.
Right.
But maybe somewhere deep down, they just did not realize how much of a sort of pariah that Survive had become. It is one of the biggest scandals in the knife community that a lot of people don't know about. But thousands of people getting stiffed, $1 million+ down the toilet. It's pretty significant. It's pretty significant.
It's unbelievable.
It is
the scale.
Yeah, and like I remember, the kinds of scandals you hear about is, somebody's Rockwell's 2 points lower than what they said,
right.
Or Bark River sent out some A2 marked as 20 CV, or these were like the big kinds of whatever little things that would go on and people would lose their mind about. But this, went on for over 10 years, and it was. I don't think Survive meant to be like a scam. They're talking a lot about a scam. I don't think that was their initial intention, although quite certainly by the time it got done, that's exactly what it was. I mean, he was selling finished knives to brick and mortar stores that were people's orders, and it was pretty clearly at that point a scam. But he also just made so many terrible business decisions, and it was a symphony of tragedies and failures and missteps and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a sad story. It's a sad personal story, and it's sad for all the people that lost. For a lot of people, $200-300. That's really significant for them to pony that up, and I can't imagine, how those people feel. So I think Micron knives, they did start out in the worst possible way, but look, if they start coming out with a quality product at a decent price and people start using them and liking them, none of this will matter, if they're following through on their promises.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
So it just, and
it was shocking. It was shocking.
Even the people on Blade forums, because I read through all of it, I think they even stepped back a little bit and thought, okay, all right, maybe we released the Kraken a little too quick here on on these guys.
Well, that's what they like. That's what they like to do.
They're definitely trigger happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish them well. I feel bad that
they're very nice guys. They are.
Yeah, I feel
Very
bad
smart.
that they basically just stepped in a giant pile of poop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I once was, I have a guy who I used to work for who has a lot of connections, and he knew an engineer and a few machinists, and he was thinking about financially backing a new knife manufacturing plant for me and my brand. And he wanted me to
That's
meet
awesome.
with you guys, and I told him it was probably a bad idea. But I talked to these guys honestly, and what stumped them, what stopped them in their tracks was the most ironic thing. It was the Kydex sheaths for my knives. They were just absolutely, they'd never worked with anything like it. I'm talking about thermoplastic and this and that and the other, and they were just blown away. But I told the guy, Ray, I said, look, there is so much more. People look at a knife and they see a simple tool like a pry bar. They see a splitting maul. They see a scythe. There's so much more nuance to making a knife today. Understanding edge geometry and design and like how important every little detail is, and then what the cost is going to be like, but what you can charge to remain competitive. I told him, look, these guys might be great machinists, but if they were going to be successful being knife makers, chances are they'd already be making knives. I'm working with White River. They already have everything figured out. I'm not leaving that. And also, you don't want me managing my own shop, because if I was going to be a good industrial manager, that's probably what I would already be doing as well. But and I'm not saying nobody can go out and do this. Nobody can start this. John, you're doing this. Gary, at some point you decided you were going to do this. I do believe that people can get into knife making and make it a long ways. But to start out from square one, having never made a knife, and now you want to be a production company, right? Or even when you make your first knife, no matter who you are, any person on this planet, when they make their first knife, if they understand all the nuances of knife making, they're something else, right? This is something where a really good knife is more than the sum of its parts. And it takes a lot to make a really good knife. So I would say, as a couple guys who are invested in equipment and making tubas and stuff like that, I wish them well. But, when they went into blade forums and made their announcement, they were kind of showing, I think they didn't understand the political climate, maybe might be the right term. And they will have some very serious uphill battles to figure things out. And if they want to figure things out, they'll need, and if they ever see this, they'll need to reach out to other people who are doing this, who are willing to help them, willing to teach them, willing to pay for classes. They need to go take classes. All the best people that I know spent a lot of time on YouTube, a lot of time in learning, a lot of time in trial and error, and most of them went out to learn with other people as well.
Yeah.
So I don't believe it's something on a manufacturing scale that someone can go from 0 to 100 and really get a good return on investment. I think it's a lot more complicated than people think. They look at it and they see a sharpened piece of metal and a good knife.
Right. They couldn't be any more wrong. That's what I did. I sought out, set a few kind of old school blacksmith knife makers in the area. Probably visited about 15 shops and checked out their operations, then a couple smaller makers and that aren't even published or public at all. Then I went down and stayed with Alan, for a week down in South Carolina, and gave Gary a good run for his money. Went up there quite a few times, asking, God, I don't think there's anything in my shop I didn't, ask Gary 37 questions about as far as equipment and this and that. So thank you again, Gary. But that's what I did, because I it's like shoeing horses. When I started getting into that, I went and apprenticed for a couple guys and kind of saw the different styles and how to do things and burning or not burning. And,
Well, one of the angles here, as it relates to starting a knife company or being a knife company, I had a fundamental passion for knives. I had a particular style I liked. I had a particular genre of knives that I liked. And so if I have a fully functioning machine shop that, it might be geared towards knives, that from a business model point of view doesn't necessarily make the most sense. Like for Micron, if they have this fully functional machine shop, make pump housings or make for NASA, or, you know what I mean? There are so many more high profit, general, like the knife world isn't the place you come to go to make the big bucks.
No.
Right.
Like I do this because I enjoy. To me, there is a satisfaction in creating something that has such a connection to people, an emotional connection. These knives that I make will most likely they better outlast me. And so, it's partly your legacy in this world. So there's a lot of complex sort of emotional, personal things going on as it relates to making knives that goes far beyond, hey, I see there's some money in this. I'm going to make some money making knives. That's like I'm going to make some money opening a restaurant. It's like, it's not, you got to be above average just to stay afloat, no less,
Well, it has to be a passion project, and you probably need to be autistic.
There's definitely something going on out in that barn.
I mean, this is my third attempt at a knife brand, and I had a rough time of it. I've had a rough time of business in general, and I get in my own way more often than probably anybody else gets in my way. But like I'm here because I can't not do it. So what is it with this piece of metal that cuts things, right? That keeps me coming back where I have to be involved, but I am. So here I am. Heavy 8 tactical. So I think, if you're going to start out, that's probably like where you should start, is that passion that you can't get away from. And like you said, if you're just starting out like, oh, we got the machines, maybe we should make these knives. Not a good recipe for success, not a good recipe for profit. And you have to be profitable. You have to make enough money to keep making, to spend the time making, even if you do love it, you're passionate about it, because you're going to spend a lot of time. I don't make my knives, and I still find a way to spend a freaking ton of time running this business and doing some of the silly things that I do. So, there's so much that goes into it. I do wish the guys success, certainly, and not talking down to them at all. But it's a rough way to go. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see if they actually capture a lingering Survive fan base or not.
I don't know if there's much of that lingering.
It's
that lingers sort of like flatulence.
It's dissipated rather quickly. There was a very strong burst of excitement, I think, and a massive growth of interest wrapped around the drama. And then there was a very quick.
Quick deflation. And I told Jacob today, Gary, that I've been trying to sell 2 of my larger, very rare survives in MagnaCut, and I didn't even get a nibble. And if it was 2 months ago, they'd have freaking went for $600.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I
Plus,
think the story got out a little more and people couldn't deny it. You know, when I did that Magna Cut video pushing back when Guy was like, all my problems are because Magna Cut's terrible, basically. And and basically then the thing that he said to push me over the edge was, uh, all my problems are because of Magna Cut. And the only reason nobody else has problems like I do with Magna Cut is because nobody builds knives to my specifications and quality, which was just total baloney. And so it was at that point I made the video. But all that to say, uh, there were a handful of people in the comments section of that video that were very pro Survive. Now, granted, 3 or 4 of them were Guy himself with different screen names. But,
that's Guy.
but there were some others. And they were accusing me of deleting comments. And I didn't delete any comments on there. Sometimes I think YouTube does, though.
Yeah,
I think
YouTube does. Yeah, they will.
Or
they'll hold them. They'll hold them for a week or two, and then they'll pop up.
The only times I have ever been accused of deleting comments when I wasn't was surrounding my Survive videos. And it's so interesting, it's like that, again, that elephant in the room, but there was a very interesting, for playing in a victim role a lot, there was a very interesting thing that would happen each and every day. And I had to fight very, very, very hard and can stay consistent in that fight all day till the end of the day when everybody would call it a day and go to sleep, to not allow Guy to attack other businesses. And a lot of people were so conflated and so misdirected in thinking that the voids and the decarb, the voids in the Magna Cut and Crucible was like the downfall of Survive, when it was like 26 blades out of 2,000 had voids in them. I mean, it was nothing, So,
right.
and said voids were not even big enough to put the head of a pin in, most of them anyway, that surfaced. But, when that first ended, that period in my life first ended, Jacob, you were one of the only people that at least believed me at face value and saw the insane amount of money, time, and effort that I put into at least getting some people's knives out the door. I went into this, that the whole situation, and I had a lawyer. I had my father, who's very intelligent, and the amount of stuff that we didn't know about that was professionally hidden, that I found out, after I was there for months, sending stuff for you people to review and talking about the future with this company. And when that first occurred, I went on the website. I shut everything down as far as the 2 pre-orders for the TSKs that we actually had finished. I turned them off and I walked right out the door. And I remember panicking in my head because I was like, how are people not going to think that I had a part in this? Like, how do I prove this? And thank God I had some good friends like you and Gabe and Scab and everybody who, you guys have spent enough time around me. I'm not intelligent enough to join an espionage, $1 million conspiracy in the knife world, but that's just morally, not my thing. But I was really scared to start making knives, man, because I thought that was going to follow me and haunt me. But it's like you said, Gary, it's consistency is key. And, if you're not poking and prodding the Survive groupies, and throwing any shade and just making good knives and being honest and open, for a certain amount of time, it's going to go away by itself.
Yeah. There's a part of me, I actually went to school for communication, and there's a part of me that would love to make a documentary just sort of outlining that story.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting. There's so many twists and turns and deaths and rebirths and then probably a lot of stuff I don't even know about. Mm-hmm. And fundamentally, where I really started asking questions was once I was making knives at some sort of scale. I I realized their knives are like at least $100 less than they need to be for what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was clear if you had $100 to the 4,000 knives that they didn't deliver, they'd have another $400,000. Although the way they burn through money, that would be, a few months. But the fact of the matter was they weren't able to deliver a knife at that price, and they didn't. They might have delivered a few. That's where you get in the Ponzi scheme thing. You deliver a few knives, they get out to reviewers, and then everybody else thinks that they're going to get the knife at that price. Like I bought one. I bought one down at one of the brick and mortar stores, and it was like $179 or something, $225 for like, it was in that Bowler, not $690, but Bowler $890. Yeah, so it was in kind of a cool steel, and it's a nice knife. And I don't. It's not like blowing my pants off here, like, oh my goodness, this is the best. But it's a good knife, It's well ground, it's well put together. The tolerances are nice. I mean, it's a clean, nice knife. It's every bit as good as anything I make. So, yeah, I see why people would want that knife for that price, because I sell them for. Well, my bushcraft knife in MagnaCut is $390, and they were selling a knife equivalent to that for what, low twos,
$236.
Yeah, and so I was 150 above. Then you can't do it. And I know what do you sell your jackalope for, Jacob?
A pretty wide range actually, but my standard's about $190.
That's what I thought.
$190. Yeah, which is a very fair price. For what it is. You're not making bank on that. Like that's a very, very fair price. It's a tough business. But when you think about, my knife is hand ground either by me or Doug. I have two guys that work for me. And it's MagnaCut, it's hand surfaced, and it's not sent out to be ground, and it's $390. I don't know that I could do it a whole lot cheaper than that, especially now with, everything costing more these days. So it's a challenge. And so, but what does Benchmade charge for their bushcraft knife?
A lot. Like
and
over 300, I think.
I think it's like 330, something like that.
Let's see.
Guys, I just wanted to say I have to just grab my charger. It's in the next room.
Sure.
Benchmade bushcraft. Let's see what the Google machine says.
Well, Gary, remember the new Crewwear and
it's only
carbon fiber one was $400.
Right. Well, here it is. The Benchmade bushcraft, $25.83 on AliExpress, free shipping. So it actually wasn't as expensive as I thought.
Yeah. There you go.
Now here it is on Shields. I never even heard that. Employee owned. Benchmade 163, number one bushcraft. So this will be, similar to mine. What I don't understand is they do this knife, I think, in S30V.
Mm-hmm.
OD green, blah, blah, blah. It's funny. They're not even, this particular site doesn't even mention the steel, but I think it's this 30V. So $400. So I like Benchmade knives. I don't have anything against Benchmade knives. I like them. I buy them. I own them. But if I could get something from Benchmade knives, which is I would say a more premium American manufacturer, but a bit of a large scale manufacturer, or like a dude like me, or somebody else, that just seems more interesting to me. Like for my dollar, I would rather have something a little more unique.
Yeah.
And to me, this doesn't look like a bushcraft. It looks like a camp knife. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but either way. So if I'm able to deliver my knife, my knife's just under 400. That knife is 400, and then Survive was 220 or whatever it was. So that clearly, my uncle used to have a saying in business, and this is the best saying in business. I use it to this day. He says, some people are going to get a bargain no matter how much money they have to spend. And that was sort of the case with Survive. You thought you got a bargain, and you would have had you had got the knife, but that it was just too cheap. It was too cheap. It was too cheap.
Well, and that's part of what drove guys' sales and brought money in, was the fact that it was too cheap. But then you have no meat left on the bone. You don't have anything for marketing. You don't have anything for mess ups. You don't have anything for anything that's going to happen. So every time something happens or something big happens or you need something, you're pulling out loans, you're getting into predatory lending. You have no cash left over whatsoever. And if something bad happens and you've got all of these pre-orders, now you have no money to make the pre-orders, but you also have no money for anything else. And it's a very vicious circle, certainly. And so my getting involved, I was blown away when I saw that Survive had knives for sale in stock. And so from the outside, I thought, having watched from a distance for almost 10 years, I thought something must really have changed here. There are knives, there's the EDC4s were available. And I thought, they've got knives in stock for sale. They're actually making money. This must be a turnaround point. I don't know what happened to make that possible. But whoever gave them that idea, I wish they had given them that idea 8 years earlier. Hey, let's actually make knives and then sell them.
Yeah, that was me, right?
Right.
Yeah. But then some of those didn't get delivered, right?
No, every single. Okay, when I came on the scene, I explained that there was no way that we were going to continue unless we had something available on the site that started to show traction, started to give us traction. I got whiteboards. I redid everything. I kept everyone on track and worked tirelessly with Ellie. And I came up with same day shipping for the EDC4s. All those.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I specifically, we had 6 left that were pre-orders. I made sure that every pre-order of the EDC4 type of model, the EDC4 model, except for the Magna Cut ones, because we didn't have Magna Cut. Most of those people I was actually able to reach out to, get them to change steels for a partial refund, and sent those out anyway. Then I allowed Ellie to put the EDC4s that were all extras on the site to subsidize us continuing to make all the back orders. So as I said several times in my discussion videos, I got Guy and Ellie and Mike will tell you that it was 100%. If I wouldn't have gone, not another knife would have went out. And I was the reason, and keeping the lights on and paying all of these fees and back payments to get us to the point where we got probably over 1,000 knives out the door, probably about 1,200 knives out the door that would not have gone out. So that whole thing with the EDC4's in-stock availability, all of that was actually 100% my idea, and I made sure that we got all the orders for the EDC4s fulfilled before we used all the extras to help subsidize doing the old ones. But then again, guys, we're talking about me trying to apply my logic as a human to something so unlogical, So when I tell you, right, there is a black crate that I have pictured every time someone says the word Survive for any reason, even talking about other movies, whatever. I literally picture this crate, and it had 420 GSO 10 blades in it that were fully heat treated, surface finished, and ready for bevel grinding. And I said to Mike, how long have these blades been done at this point? Because I just kept moving them out of the way, moving them. I'm, waking. I'm in there at 5 a.m. every morning, freaking going wild, reorganizing, trying to get us back on track. And we kept moving this box around. And I said, how long have these been in this crate? And his answer was between 4 and 5 years. And when you look at that, okay, I tried to use the whiteboard idea as a physical reference of this is how long each step is taking. They never clocked processes. All these things are things that I used logical sense. Well, how long is it going to take us to make six pallets of knives? I have no idea. Okay, well, let's start clocking processes so we have a better idea of time frames. All these things I thought about, dude. I was like crazy wizard up there. I was just put every ounce of effort in my entire body into this thing. So I said to Mike, I came up with this whole protocol where at the end of the day, all you have to do is one table of these knives, which was like 8 or 9. So by the end of the month, we have 50 of those 420 that can go right out the door. We had handles, we had sheaths, we had hardware. Everything was blasted, finished, ready to go. They just needed bevel ground, tumbled, sharpened, laser engraved, assembled, out the door. Everything was there, bought and paid for. And when I had the only person that agreed was Mike, and when I had such a pushback from Guy that that they understand my enthusiasm to get things back on track fast, but that this is going to take more time, and that I don't understand the process. And I fought tooth and nail with the most logical plans, just like that. At the end of the day, so it doesn't get in front of anything. You don't have to stress about it. At the end of the day, do one tableful. It'll take roughly 60, 70 minutes. That's the last hour of each day. A month later, we'll be done with the damn knives. I mean, and even these very logical patterns and programs that I was trying to affiliate into our day-to-day work effort there were met with a brick wall. And I started drinking pretty heavily when I was down there, because I would get to this point where you are trying to apply logic to a fairy from another world. It doesn't speak your language, it doesn't smell, it doesn't sense, it doesn't hear, and you're screaming at it. It doesn't that's how different, the worlds are here. It blew my mind. And that's why I did, all the discussion videos I did, because there was no way for me to logically explain this, because I've never come into contact with that type of person before, or that situation, on such a grand scale, as to where it was every single advancement and perfect, here's the numbers, this is what's going to help. We just have to do this, and it's not going to change your workday whatsoever. Was met with a brick wall. It was just, ugh.
Sounds like what you wanted to say was,
help me. Help.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm gonna have to get going here shortly.
You got to be freezing over there.
Huh?
You got to be freezing over there.
I am cold. I'm actually just wearing Hey Dudes like a bum, and so my toes are. I lost feeling in them a long time ago. I mean, it's really cold.
Aren't you like in Kentucky? Isn't it always warm down there?
I like this weather, to be honest with you. I really do like this weather. So basically, yeah, it's always warm down here. We get a month and a half of winter with a couple cold snaps. I think 2 nights ago it was about it was right at 0 degrees, and we're heating the house with wood at the moment because my propane guy, I guess, disappeared. So it's been a lot. And then you add on the goat kids and the puppies and our baby and our children and homeschooling and business. It's been a lot. I love this weather, but if I could just not have any puppies or goats, any dogs or goats give birth during this weather, that would be freaking ideal. So much extra work with these doggone animals. But anyways, yeah, so yes, I am cold. But I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion tonight, guys. I greatly appreciate having both of you guys on. So, Gary, what is your website?
Prettyblades.com.
Prettyblades.com, and that will be in the description box below. John, You said your website's going to be up next week.
My website will be live in 1 week. Yes.
So
And my
this,
first drop's going to be in about a month. And if you
Okay,
guys want to know more, follow me on Instagram. And
absolutely, Heavy Set Tactical. This video probably will take about a week to come up. So as soon as you get that website up and live, I'll throw it in the description box.
yeah, I'll give you the link.
Yeah. So that will be in the description box below for anybody who's made it this far into the video. Congratulations, you are probably one of us. So I will talk to everybody in the comment section below. I hope that you'll have a blessed day. Support these guys. Guys, if you like knives, support knife makers because we're starving artists out here. Thank you guys again, and I hope everybody has a blessed day. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having us, Jacob.
Absolutely.
Thanks for talking to me.